Good afternoon everyone, welcome to Chat UTD. This is the first video of a series of videos profiling the managers in line to potentially take over from Erik ten Hag should he lose his job at United. The first person I'm going to profile is the person out of a pretty paltry list that I would want the most, and that's Thiago Motta. I'm aware that I haven't really given any credence to my reasoning as to why I want him above the other names being mentioned, so I feel it's important to do that. Before I get into that, to give context, I think it's important to look at how things are changing at Old Trafford. In the past, we've always looked at big name managers. We've always looked at name managers, because really the manager previously has run the club, and the reason that's been unsuccessful has been because that manager might be trying to set an ethos, but he's being sabotaged at every turn by imbeciles that are around him, both above him and below him, but particularly above him, with the Glazers and their moronic friends that have been calling the shots over the last 10 years. We're told that's going to change, and that the culture of the club is going to be, the ethos and the way that we play even, is going to be set by the Chief Executive, Omar Barada, the Director of Football, if he ever gets here, Dan Ashworth, and the Technical Director who's just arrived, Jason Wilcox. And I believe that what we'll see as a result from that is that we'll get what we would have previously seen as quite left field appointments, in that we'll move away probably, I think, to some degree from big name managers, unless there's a really obvious one out there who suits the culture and the ethos that Barada and Ashworth in particular want. There aren't any big name managers out there other than Zidane that are being linked with the United job. The list is scary. I've got it in front of me, and I'll go through it in a minute. But I think it's important to just keep this in mind, that times are changing, and what we did previously, I'm not sure we'll do moving forward. So we can't judge it, who's going to get the job if it becomes available, on what would have happened previously. I think we're looking at maybe what will happen moving forward. As I said in my video yesterday, we're between structures. Thank God, gone are the days of the Glazers, Woodward, Arnold, Matt Judge, John Murtough, Darren Fletcher. They're not calling the shots anymore. But at the moment, neither are Barada, Ashworth and Wilcox. So at the moment, we're somewhere in the middle with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Sir David Brailsford and Jean-Claude Blanc, and obviously Jason Wilcox has just joined. There's nothing to suggest that Omar Barada and Dan Ashworth, even if they're on gardening leave, can't suggest a manager, of course, because I'm sure they could do that. But when we haven't got that structure in place for a new manager when he comes in. Looking at the odds, Southgate's 2-1, unbelievable. Graham Potter's 5-2, even more unbelievable. Thomas Tuchel 4-1, uninspiring. De Zerbi 7-1, uninspiring. Hasn't Nagelsmann just signed a new contract somewhere? So I'm not sure why he's still on there. 10-1. Zidane 10-1. Motta 16-1. So to give context, he's the same odds as Unai Emery, and he's the 7th favourite to get the job. So this might be what I want. It's highly unlikely to happen looking at those odds. Although, of course, the bookmakers have been wrong before. So let's profile him. We'll start by looking at his playing career. He started at Barcelona. So his formative career was at Barcelona as a youngster. He then played only a handful of games for their senior team before moving on to Atletico Madrid, another big club. Again, didn't make a lot of appearances for them. Then Genoa. But it was his later career at Inter Milan and PSG where he made more of a name for himself. I saw him a few times play, particularly playing for PSG in the Champions League, and thought he had a good presence, was a good player. But I can't say I tracked his career that carefully. He played for Italy 30 times despite being born in Brazil. Again, Italy, strong nation in world football. So I think that's a decent career. Some good clubs there, and some big clubs, which I will come back around to in a little bit as to why I think that's important. As a manager, he started off in 2018. He was the youth team manager at PSG, and then he got a job at Genoa, which didn't last very long. He then went to a very fashionable Italian team, and forgive me if I get this wrong in terms of pronunciation. I think it's Spezia. And he kept them up, which was seen as quite a major achievement. And subsequently, in 2022, September of 2022, he got the Bologna job. In his first season, 22 to 23, they finished 9th, which was 4 places higher than the previous season. They scored 53 goals, can't read my own writing, and goals against, I think, was 49. So, didn't score a lot, conceded quite a few, really. That was the first season. And then it's this season, 23-24, where he's really catapulted himself into the limelight in terms of being mentioned with jobs like Juventus, United, and before Xavi signed his new contract, Barcelona as well. Bologna, with 5 games to go, sit 4th. On Monday night, they beat Roma in Rome 3-1. Roma are the team that are 5th to move 4 clear of Roma. Well, they were 7 clear, but Roma had a game in hand. They've won that game in hand. So they're 4 clear of Roma. They're actually only 2 points behind Juventus in 3rd, having played the same amount of games. There's 5 games to go. And this time, after 33 games, goals for is 48, goals against 26. So the goals for is on target to be pretty similar to last season. The goals against, and albeit there's still 5 games to go, but that's half the amount of goals that they conceded last year. They've halved it. I think that's quite relevant because one of my criticisms of Ten Hag is that I think he's unable to bring about change. He doesn't seem to know what to do to stop to stem the tide when it's just attack after attack after attack against us, and we've conceded a silly amount of shots this season, and he keeps saying that's all right. Well, I think it's coming home to roost now. We are conceding a lot of goals, and here's a manager, okay, in a different league, but has impacted quite a big change, has overseen quite a big change from his team. I wouldn't be too concerned with looking at those stats and saying, well, is he quite a pragmatic manager? Because he hasn't conceded many, but they've not scored a particularly big amount of goals either. But you've got to remember, this is Bologna. They're not a team with household names. They're not expected to be anywhere near where they are now. They have the 8th smallest budget in Italy. So it stands to reason they're probably going to win games by the odd goal, and they're probably going to have to be quite pragmatic and nick results, I imagine. So I wouldn't read too much into that. He's known as being quite an innovative tactical thinker, in that he plays formations, but they're quite fluid, and he's quite happy for the team to kind of go in from one formation to another as the game's going along. He seems to have coined this phrase, or this formation of a 2-7-2 formation. I've tried to get my head around it. Maybe it needs a better football mind than mine. I know that normally when we're looking at a formation, it goes up the pitch, so 4-3-3, for example. He's going across horizontally, 2-7-2, and he includes the goalkeeper in it. So it's a variation of a standard formation, but he called it something different, and he's included the goalkeeper. But he seemed to get quite a lot of notoriety for that. But reading between the lines, I think quite an innovative thinker, quite happy to get, if he looks at the qualities of a player and thinks they're playing right back, he should probably be better as a centre back. I think he's actually done this. He converted a right back to a centre back and revolutionised that player's game. So one of my criticisms again of the modern United is that we have players like Anthony and Rashford who keep doing the same things over and over again. It doesn't look like they're being coached. It doesn't look like they're in particular with Anthony, it doesn't look like his potential, which I think he's got quite a lot of, is being cultivated. It just seems like, well, you cost 85 million quid, you must be a good player, I don't need to coach you. That's what it looks like. I'm sure that's not quite as simple as that, but I like the fact that he perhaps has a reputation for improving players. It's part of a coach's responsibility to do that. Let's look at the pros and cons. Well, I'll start with the cons. There's not many. My instinct tells me it's a bit too soon, but I'm aware that my instinct is based on how it used to be. We'd never do this normally. We'd never done this between 2014 to now. We would never pick a manager who's had one decent season, which essentially he has. And I said at the start of the video, we're moving away from that. I think it'd be a bold move, as I say, when we're in between structures, that your first appointment is someone with 1 year's experience of doing something that was quite special. I still think everyone's going to take a bit of time to catch up with this new way of doing things at United in terms of the media, the fans, and you've got to say, whether we like it or not, the media and the fans play a big part in the narrative around the club. So next season, if we went 2-0 down at home to Luton, the camera's not going to pan to Dan Ashworth and Omar Barada in the posh seats. It's going to pan to the dugout, and as the person in the dugout got broad enough shoulders to be able to handle all that microscopic analysis and scrutiny. I'm not saying he hasn't, but it would be a big leap of faith from Ineos, I think, to make this their first appointment. So I'd say probably that's the only con. Yeah, that's the only con. In terms of pros, he hasn't been scarred. He's not bitter and twisted. We got Mourinho 3 or 4 years later than we should have got him. There's managers, I believe, not some managers are able to transcend this, but most managers have an expiry date in terms of their stock being high, and when you've got to strike and get them. Mourinho for me was like that, and the big one that springs to mind is Pochettino. In 2014, when Moyes was sacked, there was support for Pochettino amongst the United board members, particularly Ferguson. And we didn't go for him, and I think based on the fact that he'd only been manager of Southampton and Espanyol. But he was a bright, innovative manager who you could see had done a super job, particularly at Southampton. Then when the Van Gaal's job became available, again we didn't go for Pochettino. And when Mourinho got sacked, we didn't go for him. By the time it came to Solskjaer getting sacked and it being, I think the media presented it as a straight fight between Pochettino and Ten Hag. Pochettino's stock had fallen so far, it was a one-horse race really, it was Ten Hag. And that doesn't mean to say that at one point in his life, Pochettino couldn't have been a really good Man United manager, because I really think he could. And I think he would have been so better suited to United than Van Gaal, and I think he probably would have been better suited in terms of what we want than Mourinho as well. But I know that's an opinion, but the point being, we didn't strike while the iron was hot, and then the chance was never there again. And with Motta, my worry is we don't go for him, and someone else does, and then it makes it harder for us to get him in the future. Another big plus point is that the Glazers would never do this. They will have never heard of him, so they wouldn't do it. They're lazy in their appointment of managers, so there's no way they'd go for Motta. I like that it's someone who perhaps could come in and have his best years at United, instead of someone who's made their reputation over a period of time somewhere else, comes into United and can't handle it. Now, I know Ferguson had done amazingly well at Aberdeen, but he was 45, 46, I think, when he came to United, so he was still a relatively young manager. And doing it in Scotland, and I know he did it in Europe with Aberdeen in the Cup Winners' Cup, but doing it in Scotland, doing it in England, are two different things. He made his reputation really at United, and of course is remembered certainly a lot more for the period of time he had at United than Aberdeen. But I'd like a manager to come and have his best years at United, and at that age, was he 42, 41, 42, he certainly could do that. With the new way of doing things as it's been presented to us, the manager is a cog in a wheel. Everything else is set by Barada and Ashworth, as I touched on at the start of the video. So the manager's job is always going to be important, but it's not necessarily important that a manager is there for 10 years, as we've always probably tried to go for someone that we thought, well, this could be the manager for the next, let's say 5 years, modern football, 5 years. And the fan base is going to have to get used to the fact that old adage of you've got to give the manager time, you've got to give him 3-4 years. That's going to change, because in football environments where you've got chief exec, director of football, technical director, recruitment person, etc. The manager's just part of that, and they're dispensable. If it's not working, you let him go. But the structure stays the same. Now, what we've done, we've swung wildly from one way to another, and subsequently, you've got what you've got over the last 10 years. Moyes is a relatively pragmatic manager, but he's a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. I wouldn't say he's got a massively definable style of football. So we went from him to Van Gaal, who's got a very, very finite style of football. Then Mourinho, and whilst Van Gaal and Mourinho were both boring in their style of football, Mourinho wasn't a possession-based manager particularly. He's more of a counter-attacking manager. Solskjaer ended up being a counter-attacking manager, but I don't think particularly had a style of play. And Ten Hag, we're led to believe, is a possession-based, high-pressing, possession-based manager. And he ain't got the players to do it. So if you set a structure from the top, then that manager has to fall into that. Big name managers want to come and make their mark on things. Managers like Motta, and probably De Zerbi to some degree, and managers like that, are probably more happy to come in and say, if this is what you want me to do, I'll try and do it. So I think that counts for him in this argument. Do I think they are going to do this? No, I don't think they will. As I said, that list at the start terrifies me. Gareth Southgate being 2-1 to be the next United manager is almost like I've woken up and it's April Fool's Day. It's incredible, and I'm going to do my next video is going to be on Southgate actually, where I defend him to some degree in terms of the criticism he's had from other people. But that in no way makes me want to have him as United manager. I just think we have to be fair about the appraisal of his efforts with England. But for him to be 2-1 is inexplicable. And for Potter to be 5-2, I mean, Potter was linked with the Stoke job not that long ago. He's been linked with the Nice job. I know there's a link with Ineos. Nice and Stoke. Not Barcelona, not Liverpool. Not any of the half-decent clubs. If Sporting Lisbon let go of Amorim this summer, they would not go anywhere near Graham Potter because they would see that he's probably beneath their ability so beneath them as a club. So that is staggering, and there's got to be something in it. The bookies don't tend to get this stuff wildly wrong. So if we're talking about people like that, and then you've got Motta, it's going to sound like a rhyme. I'd have Motta ahead of Potter, no doubt about it. I'd have Motta ahead of Southgate. I'd have him ahead of Tuchel. I think Tuchel will be a boring appointment. I'd have him ahead of De Zerbi because I just think De Zerbi's Ten Hag Mark II. I don't think he'd be that really any different. I don't think he's done massive things in the game. Nagelsmann's signed to another contract. Zidane would be amazing, but I don't think he'd come. And then you've got Motta. And is Motta better than Ten Hag? Well, at the moment, I don't think we've got anything to lose. I don't think he could come in and do much worse than what we've done this season. So it's not a massive deep dive, there's not an awful lot of information out there about him, but it's my overview of what I think is would be quite a bright, innovative appointment, and particularly in comparison to that list, which is just, as I say, bloody terrifying. But he's 16-1. Would I put a fiver on it if I was a betting man for the sake of it? Yeah. Do I think I'd get my money back? Probably not. So there it is. Proof's in the pudding, innit? If you get Bologna into 4th or even 3rd place in the Italian league, I tell you what, you're doing something very, very special. So that does speak for itself. Next one, Southgate. Glazers out.